Hello. This is At Home Radio, which is about being comfortable or at home where we are, whether we are in our own space or out in the world. I'm Kate Thomas, and I'm here with Christina Hidek, professional home and office organizer. I would like to start off hearing from Christina. Christina, would you tell us a story, please?
Sure. Well, a really popular story that always gets people's interest, piques their interest, is one where I was working with a client. I think it was like the second time I'd been working with her, but she lived within walking distance to a nearby beach. Okay. And so we were cleaning out her front hall closet, and because it was so stuffed full of things, it wasn't functional for her. And it was just one of many spaces in her house that wasn't working. But that was the one we decided to work with first because of the location to the front door. So we were emptying everything out. And when I work with clients, I tend to notice just different things, whether people are left-handed or right-handed, just different things about their lives that you wouldn't necessarily think matter, but they do. So this particular client had a whole mess of hats, like maybe over 30. And I'm not saying this because I was judging her or then or now about the number of hats, but she had a lot of hats. And she had a hairstyle that wasn't really conducive to wearing hats. So I was already tipped off. You know how that is for women. You either have a hair that supports or a hairstyle that supports hats or you don't. And so she did not. She had very nice curly hair that was very voluminous, and a hat would have just given her hat head for the rest of the day. And so I already knew that I could maybe take advantage of this that the hats would be an opportunity for something to let go of. And so we were going through each hat, and I would just hold it up and she'd say yes or no, like it either goes or stays. And so we got to this one hat, and it was a floppy beach hat. And I said, well, what's this? And she goes, well, it's a floppy beach hat. Everybody needs a floppy beach hat.
Of course.
Of course, right? You just assume that. And so right then in my head, I had a little conversation with myself, actually with her, but not verbal. And I said, but you see, not everybody does need a floppy beach hat. So I thought, okay, we're going to ask a couple more questions to see if she really, if she needs this or not. And so I asked her a couple questions. I said, well, how long have you lived here for? She goes, I think 9 or 10 years. And remember how that she was within walking distance to a beach, right? Mm-hmm. I said, well, how many times since you've lived here have you gone to the beach? A very innocent, non-judgmental question.
Absolutely.
And without skipping a beat, she goes, it can go. So she was a little more, sometimes it takes more questions for me to get that information out of clients, but she skipped right to the end and realized that no, in fact, everybody might need a floppy beach hat, but she was not everybody. And she was starting to get real about what she wanted her life to look like.
That's great. So what is the moral of that story, Christina?
Well, I think there are so many that you could take away, but the one that I will tell clients that story a lot because I think it demonstrates a few things. One, that you really need to be real about where you are in life when you're making decisions about what you are either keeping or letting go of. So if getting organized is on your to-do list, you can't be making these decisions in a vacuum. Like they have to be based on something. So for her, getting rid of the hat helped her reach her goal of having less items in her house that was very cluttered, and she didn't want to deal with it anymore. And by being realistic that she wasn't, if she hadn't already used it in 9 or 10 years, she probably wasn't going to, got her there real quick. And so that was an easy decision, and she didn't have any guilt or any hesitation. She just said, it can go. And I was like, sweet.
That's wonderful. It really is. I think a lot of times we as people, or I have done this for sure, I've held on to things thinking it will fit into my life down the road. But it doesn't. It never does. Because if it's not fitting now, it's unlikely to magically fit.
Right. Right. And I'm one for not living in woulda, coulda, shoulda land, but I sometimes, when my attic is a space, like sometimes it's the cobbler's children have no shoes situation around here when I get really busy. Yeah, I will confess, because nobody's house is 100% of the time organized. Like that's just a fallacy. So if that is your goal, you need to bring it down because you are striving for something that's just going to drive you nuts. It's not going to happen, but that's okay, right? So yes, even my house does not look like it could be in a magazine shoot every day of the year. I'd even say there's no days that it ever looks like that. Maybe one room looks like that, but to get them all in sync with my family I'm married and I have 2 boys, not really going to happen.
Okay. Well, that is very good to hear, actually.
Yeah.
I like that. Gives me comfort.
Well, I think we hold ourselves too high of standards that are made up standards all the time, and it doesn't serve us.
Yes, for sure. So you started your company, Streamlined Living, was that 2011?
Yeah, I'm really bad with numbers. That's why I went to law school. So if that's what you're telling me, if I wrote it down so like that one time, I'm really bad with numbers.
Well, around then. So you have been helping people in the greater Cleveland area, which is where you live, in person for a long time, but now it's exclusively online. How does that work?
Well, it's just kind of like what we're doing right now, only usually I'm not looking at my clients. Usually they set me up looking at the space. And it can be difficult because sometimes people don't realize what the camera or the phone can see. Like they think I can see one thing and I'm like, go to the left, or I'm looking at your tush. Sometimes I'm like, do you want me to be looking at that? And sometimes I don't mention anything, but that's the reality of it. But it works really well. And at first I was really skeptical that would work. And I have these clients who are very honest with me, and they're like, this has been every bit as helpful to have you to meet virtually as when we were meeting in person. And that gave me a lot of confidence, but that's because I have a lot of experience. And I think, quite honestly, I can toot my own horn here. I'm really good at what I do. And so, sometimes when you're not very good at what you do, you can't transfer those skills, but it's just having a conversation, and I'm still able, we're still able to meet the goals of the clients. It might take a little bit longer. And sometimes I have them redo things. Like I was working with one client this weekend, and we were reorganizing her bathroom virtually. And so it was a space that had shelving in a cabinet and a whole bunch of stuff, like a whole bunch of little stuff. And it had kind of sort of been organized where cleaning was on one shelf, but then there was paper products scattered everywhere. And so we had, in the previous session, I had her measure the space, and just to double check, I was like, can you just show me? Because I wasn't sure there'd be clearance for everything. Because sometimes in older houses, and she has an older house in Shaker Heights, there's different things that you need to take into account, like an electrical box might cut into a closet, or there might be a lip. Anyway, I needed to make sure I had full clearance for the containers I was going to choose for her. So she went ahead and ordered, we sized it, she ordered the containers, and so this was the day to load everything in. And so I just let her work. And then when I could interject with a way that she could optimize it, like she was filling a basket or a bin with, it was like cold and flu stuff. And she had the regular cold and flu stuff, some bottles of NyQuil, and some packages of cough drops. Well, she was putting the cough drops, which are very large and tall, in the front. And I said, how about you move those to the back so that they don't block the view of everything else? And she goes, I wouldn't have thought about that. And I'm like, it's the little details. So it might actually be more helpful because I have to explain why. I don't have to, but I'm choosing to explain why. I would have, and maybe if I was there in person, I wouldn't have explained that, because I would have
done it.
Well, I would have done it for her. I would have put it in the cabinet, and she would have been like, looks great. But now she knows And she'll think about that, like, oh, wait, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny detail, but that all those things collectively add up. And that's what makes a space like organized and functional. It's like all the details.
Well, do you have a favorite DIY organizing solution or a couple that you could share?
Favorite DIY? I think the easiest one that you can do, no matter your budget, is to label shelves and like label containers. So let's just talk about your attic, because I'm in a room where my attic, you have to pass through the room I'm in to get to our attic. So it's always top of mind when I'm in this room. But I think especially in storage areas, you might have containers that you can't see through to see what's in them. And in order to save yourself a lot of headache, you should label those bins, like so that you don't need to look in them, but you need to look in them first to make sure that what you think is in the bin is actually in the bin. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in someone's house and we're going through things and they're like, it says Christmas decorations. And then we open it up and it's Easter decorations. And I'm like, close.
It's a holiday.
It is a holiday, but maybe that's why you couldn't find your Easter decorations last year, because you didn't think to look for Christmas decorations. So it's like, I guess that would be the easiest one that anybody can do, because you really can label with just about anything. Like my favorite solution actually is to not even buy labels, but to make them myself. And then I cut them out and use packing tape, clear packing tape.
Okay.
And that makes it really easy to remove them when you're done with very little adhesive residue. That's like a nerdy tip, though. Okay.
That's a very good tip. Because, when I hear label it, I think, getting one of those things and punching it out, or printing out. You could print it out, but using the packing tape like that without the sticky stuff is really great. So that's a good nerdy tip.
Okay. I'm glad. I like it. But you could that way, because labels, usually packing tape is about 4 inches wide. And then however or tall and however wide you want it to be. Right. You don't really need huge labels. You just need it to be on there, and the packing tape will hold secure, even in spaces that have inconsistent heating and cooling, like an unheated attic.
Okay. Yeah, and that's important because packing tape is made to be durable.
Yeah, and it's very inexpensive. It'll cost you probably only roll, and you have to buy good stuff. You can't buy from the dollar store because the adhesive just won't hold up. I love the 3M packing tape. Okay. So that'll run you, for just one roll, probably $5 or $6, but you can label everything from here until the eternity, with that one roll. So it's a very good investment.
Very good. That is an excellent tip. Well, you practiced law for 14 years, and you left your practice to help people organize their lives. Why?
I wanted to shock my mother-in-law. No.
Okay. Well, that probably did it.
That wasn't the reason, but that certainly is true. That did happen. I think I just realized that when I grew up, I didn't want to be an attorney anymore. And it no longer, the lifestyle of a litigation attorney didn't really fit with having small children. I didn't have my children to not see them. And when I was really busy with work, I was working 70 hours a week. And that's just I was like, there's no amount of money in the world that could compensate me for the time lost with my family. So that's why I started to look at what else am I good at doing? And I actually discovered that I was good at this by watching TV. Because, everybody finds their careers while watching TV. Well, have you ever watched Hoarders or ever heard of the show Hoarders?
I have heard of it, yes.
Okay, so I would watch that show, and I was not obsessed with it, but would record it on my DVR and look forward to it. And you know how there's the same same cast. So there's the same set of organizers as well as psychologists or psychiatrists that work in the different episodes. So I was watching this one episode and my husband joined me, and I looked at him and I said, I think I can be Dorothy, who is one of the organizers on the show. And he goes, I think you could be Dorothy too. And I was like, I just had never even thought about this as a career path because I'd gone to law school and I kind of anticipated that I would always practice law. It's what I kind of wanted to do ever since like high school. So it had been a long-term career goal. And to suddenly go, wait, but that doesn't really fit reality. Mm-hmm. It was an adjustment. So that's kind of how I got started. And to bring it full circle, I've connected with Dorothy on Facebook and was like, you inspired me to go into this profession. And so it was really, I forget what she wrote back, but it was like, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, oh, this is so cool, because she was an idol for so long. So it was really, it's been a really good choice for me and my family, though, and something I'm very well suited to. And I think some people in my life, like my mom she's just like, I don't understand how people pay you for that. It's like, just because it comes naturally for you and me, because I got my good genes it's actually not in your genes, it is learned, but we do have a propensity. My mom is a retired teacher. So you have to be a good educator, you have to be really organized. And so I got it from her, but certainly have honed my skills on my own.
That is excellent. Well, probably an unusual career trajectory.
A little bit.
That's most excellent. And I like how you are an acute observer of people, and that has really played in. I don't know that everybody does that. And also you ask questions. I think that's the litigator in you. So you ask a lot of questions and you probe. And it's not an adversarial probing. It's just, let me get to the root of this. What is it? What is your affinity for this object or this piece of clothing? And when someone gets to that truth, that aha moment, it's like, whoa. And it changes. It changes everything, I bet.
Yeah, it does. It does. And a lot of people don't see, like, wait, you were an attorney? Like, how does that doesn't even play in? But just like you said, the asking questions. And I usually have a plan, because when I meet with clients, I don't determine their plan for them. They tell me what they want, and then I map out a plan, like the steps to get there. And so I always keep the end goal in mind. And so that's what the questions are all driving you to there. It's the same as if you would be arguing a case in court. You're right. It is the same thing. It just isn't adversarial, and most people don't see it. Like, back to the Floppy Beach hat. That's totally where I was going with her. I had asked her very innocent questions, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I don't need that hat, so it works.
Really terrific. And also, as an attorney, you adhere to a strict confidentiality policy. What does that mean for your clients?
It means that nobody will know that I'm working with you unless you tell them. So, like, I don't say, oh, I have clients I might say I have clients in Shaker Heights, but I don't tell you what street, and certainly not what house, and I don't disclose their names. I've had the privilege to work with some people very much in the public eye. I've worked for a professional athlete, for a very prominent judge here in Cleveland, and that would, it just doesn't need to be said. And on the smaller thing, I've worked with a very good friend who, she never told her mom that I'm how we got her house whipped into shape. And she told me, she goes, my mom came and was just like, oh my goodness, what happened here? And she just said, I just decided to carve out some time to take care of it. And I actually know her mom, and her mom was like, had no idea. It was like, way to go, daughter. And my friend was like, she had no idea. It was awesome. And I was like, no need to disclose your secrets. I just helped you make it happen.
That is wonderful, and technically true what she said. She did carve out the time to work with you.
Absolutely. Well, it's really like, no one is born with the skill set. you might have a propensity to take in the information a little bit easier and be able to apply different rules and stuff, but no one's born with it. It's just like if you're a baker, anybody could learn to be a baker if you have the patience to measure and to be very meticulous, because baking, is a science. It's not like, if you want to be a model, you have to be born with like blessed genes, right? You just can't like opt into that. But baking, skiing, dancing, organizing, all learn skills that you can do.
That's wonderful. I don't know about dancing.
I think enough practice. But maybe you just haven't found the right person.
Yeah, maybe.
Like who explained it in the right way. Do you know?
Yeah. Well, I was told a number of years ago that if you could learn to drive a stick, which I still drive a manual transmission car, you can learn to dance. But then I was talking to somebody else, another woman who isn't a very good dancer, and she said, I don't believe that because I drive a stick and I think it's really actually different. So I don't know. I hope someday I will, but I just haven't quite applied myself.
I think that it's partly in your mind. So growing up, I used to hate to get my picture taken, like with a passion. It was an argument. I would cry before family pictures. Like it was legit an issue. So fast forward, I go off to college, right? I go to the University of Kentucky and I join a sorority. You know what sororities do?
All kinds of pictures.
A lot. They take pictures all the time. And I always would hate, and part of the reason why I hated taking pictures is because I never liked the way I looked in them, ever. Like, ever. Well, I had to change that real quick when I got to college because I was always like cheesing it up, And magically, I started looking better in the pictures. But it was all my state of mind. So I'm just thinking, if you're going to tell yourself that you can't do something, of course you're not going to be able to do it because you've already internalized that roadblock. So just like with dancing, I'm going to challenge you on that one.
Okay,
it hasn't worked quite yet, but there's something missing. And it's not that you can't do it. That's not it. There's a missing step that hasn't clicked. And once it clicks, you're going to be dancing all the moves and feeling like hot on the dance floor.
Right. When we can go on the dance floor again.
Hey, I guess I'm dance at home. To do that. I can dance at home. There's no reason. Sometimes I dance with my kids.
Clutter. Clear the clutter first.
Come it to the side. Sometimes I organize it and I dance. I dance around and get my jam on.
All right. I like that. Like that picture. Okay. So since 2011, you've been making clutter vanish in homes and offices. So you do businesses as well.
I do.
Do you want to give an example or two of how you did that with people?
Oh, sure. So for the business application, I reorganized. I didn't actually do the work myself, but there was, because the company decided just to take care of it, but they had a marketing aisle. So they're not in pharmaceutical, but they're a medical supply company, and they go to a lot of trade shows, and all of their stuff, it was just like a big jumble, and it was a headache when they had to prepare for shows, and they went to a number of shows a year. So everything was kind of always in flux, and they had different materials that needed to go out. And because it's pharmaceuticals or medical supply stuff, they were the documentation that had to accompany the salespeople to the trade shows had to be like certain, like FDA compliant sort of thing, and they had to have the right version. And the problem was the old versions of the literature was getting mixed up with the new stuff, and there was a lot of waste because people were ordering. They didn't know what they had. And it was a very huge space. Like I've never worked in a warehouse before. So this was my first opportunity, but their marketing aisle was this big space. So we had to work with existing shelving and like kind of make it work for them. So I designed a survey to gauge the employees' needs, because sometimes what the The overarching driving force was that the owner was walking through the warehouse and saw the eyesore and was like, I'm tired of this. This is nonsense. Like, she just wanted it cleaned up. So it was more of an aesthetic reason, but I think she also acknowledged that there had to be a productivity issue because it was a big mess. So because she was not the one doing the work, I wanted to see what the needs were of the people actually living and existing in the space. Because if you're not, you can't, it's just like in your own house. Like, you can't use somebody else's systems without modifying them for use in your own space. Like, there are very few things that apply everywhere without needing to be altered. Mm-hmm. And so I devised a survey, got an understanding of the needs, and then developed a plan, a space plan for how to do things. And I just laid out the whole process for them. And I was actually pretty grateful that I didn't have to do the work because there was a lot of stuff they got rid of. So I would go back like after a month and they'd say, well, here's where we got. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you went above and beyond. But it just took them carving out a little bit of time, because so much of disorganization is just us putting things off till later. But later really doesn't come, or it hits us like a ton of bricks when our whole life is like seeming to, nothing is working and we're miserable. And then we decide we're going to get organized, which is a good solution. But that can be a hard one when you come to it like that. And so in the end, it was a much more organized space. And it's been, I think, about 1.5 years since maybe even 2 years, actually. There you go, with not being good about time. And the client said that space has continued to stay organized and extremely functional, and they are so happy with that. So it was just
wonderful.
It was nice. You can really apply the same principles. You just have to tweak them because you have more opinions. In a house, you only have your household members. In a business, you have to look at everybody who uses that space and take into account their needs.
Yes. Well, that's a great story. And I like how you don't force one system on your clients. It's really geared, it's personalized to their unique needs.
Absolutely. It has to be, or else it's not going to work. Like, I can't tell you how many clients have said, oh, I've worked with another organizer before and it just wasn't a good experience. And I would say, well, why is that? And they'd say, well, they reorganized my sink, but like the area underneath my sink, but it didn't work for me. Like, things weren't where I was used to finding them. And it just was a big old hot mess. And I just had to tear it out. And I was in no better position. I was in a worse position because I paid them and got nowhere.
Right. So, and like the woman you told me about another time when somebody reorganized all her files and she couldn't find anything. She called you in tears.
Yeah, that was a really bad thing, because this client had an existing filing system that was complicated. It was involved, and it's not what I would have chosen for her, but it worked for her and her husband. Mm-hmm. And another organizer had come in who thought she knew better and totally tore it apart. And this particular client likes paper. She is a very educated, self-employed individual, and that's just, there are certain people in life who like paper, right? And so she...
I know.
Yeah. You're like, me. But she likes paper. And so she really had a lot of paper to manage. And I think by the time I came in, it was maybe at least 4 years since the other organizer had been there, and she'd never recovered. And as a result, she had a backlog of papers to deal with that there was almost no usable floor space left in her office. It was a pretty good size office, but there were just like stacks of folders and binders and stuff because she didn't have a way to put it away anymore. And she didn't have time to like kind of reset it up. And so I had to go in and kind of fix that mistake and say, okay, well, what did you like about the other system? And so kind of recreate it. And I said, okay, well, here's the fault that I see with that system. Let's try this, but if it doesn't work, it's not like I am the last word on organizing. Like the client is. It has to work for them. And so there's a couple times when I'm like, okay, that didn't work. No, doesn't mean I'm a bad organizer. It just means that didn't work. We'll try one of the other gajillion solutions.
Did she finally end up okay?
It's still a process because the backlog was still there. And I haven't been able to work with her because of the pandemic. So.
Yeah. But anyway, I wish her the best.
Yeah, I think it's better. It's better.
I know about that. I know about the piles.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, is the best way to reach you your phone number? Or do you
online? Yeah, I have I bet you can't tell, but I'm pretty chatty. So I have, I also like to write. That's my legal side. So I do have a blog that has different organizing topics. So probably the easiest way to reach me is at my website, which is streamlinelivingoh.com.
Okay. The OH is important in there.
The OH is important, and because if you don't have the OH, which is for Ohio, then I think you can't get to anywhere because the person who had Streamline Living is no longer in business, unfortunately. Okay. And I was like, oh, but you had an awesome name.
Yeah, that is too bad. But the O makes your business. It's going to last.
Yeah.
Oh, Streamlined Living. How good that is.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else
for Ohio? But
yes. but oh,
I never thought about it like that. You're good for pointing out the different things. So.
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to say? This has been a delight speaking with you.
No, this is, I, as you can tell, I have a passion for this. I'm a bit of an organizing nerd. So I can really geek out on this topic and I can go on forever.
And to the benefit of so many. So thank you for sharing your insights, Christina. This is Kate Thomas with At Home Radio. Until next time, let's get organized. Thanks for listening.
At Home Radio. Creator and presenter, Kate Thomas. Music and video produced by Jonathan, the producer.